the one for you. Ooh, I'm never, never, never getting over you. Ooh, you know I fall to pieces for the things you do. Ooh, never, never, never getting over you. You know it's true.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 2016-2017 Collegiate Star League season. We're glad you're joining us for our first broadcast of the new season. My name is Jasmus. I am joined by the one, the only, Gorgon the Wonder Cow, to bring you an awesome week one matchup, between UC Irvine and UC Davis. Gorgon, my friend, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Happy to be here and bringing us into, as you said, the first game of the season here for CSL. Already getting pretty deep into the draft, and teams showed up a little late, but they seem to have an idea of what they want.
Midterm season, it's brutal. But alas, we are here, and we are ready to play some Dota, and no less, Patch Day. These teams have had less than 24 hours to adapt to the new patch that was released just this morning. So I'm wagering on a very interesting and I'd say diverse set of matches coming up for us today, Gordon.
Yeah, fortunately, the patch was pretty minor, just a lot of small balance changes. Didn't really impact any of the heroes that these teams tend to play a lot, at least based on their public matchmaking history. Worth noting that our Radiant side here does have a player that seems to have been inactive for the last 3 months, unless he decided to go completely private about 3 months ago. But other than that, the rest of their 4 players average over 6,000 MMR, so a very, very individually skilled team. Already picking up their Faceless Void there. I'd be kind of surprised if we didn't see them think about either an Invoker or a Storm as well, as this is a team filled with players that really love individual skill heroes.
And Shadow Demon will be the second pickup for UC Davis. And I guess that 6.88 F patch really didn't do too much because despite the nerfs, these heroes are back at full force. And I mean, what can you say? They're still great options.
Yeah, so for Shadow Demon, and we're actually going to see the Invoker get picked up here by Dire instead. C2 does play that a fair amount. So it looks to be somewhat a denial pick and somewhat a comfort pick for C2. Or possibly even characters that I can't pronounce. But looking down at the Shadow Demon, the nerf that he got today was, notable but fairly minor, all things considered. A standard, the most popular Shadow Demon build is going to be maxed Shadow Poison these days, and you're going to get about 75% of the consecutive casts of Shadow Poison at level 5 that you normally would have gotten, and you're going to get about 72% the damage per mana ratio. So, I mean, that's a substantial nerf, but in terms of what that hero is providing in terms of his setup and in terms of his control, you still have all of that.
Absolutely, and just to delve into the history of these teams here, because one is a very storied franchise throughout CSL, and the other a newcomer, but a challenging newcomer, but a newcomer nonetheless. So UC Davis last year went 7-0 in the fall season, and then 7-0 again in the spring season. This is a very strong team. They kept the core of their team together, and while they lost in the round of 16 to Penn State, this team is back and better than ever, I would argue, and hoping to come out strong against UCI.
Yeah, I mean, I remember casting this team last year. They were
Absolutely.
they were just an absolute unstoppable powerhouse. The fact that they didn't end up making it into the finals was pretty substantial, and it looks like their players have improved since last season as well. So obviously, anything can happen here. We're looking at a pretty high skill team here for Dyer as well. As you mentioned, this is their first year around, and they're sitting a little over 5,000 in terms of average MMR. So certainly not newcomers to the game,
Absolutely,
but
absolutely.
they are going to be playing uphill.
And as the bands round out here, again, staple picks from the 6.88 meta, Omni Knight, who's been resurgent, but nevertheless banned, and Drow Ranger, a strong pick in arguably any lineup in the game right now.
Yeah, so both Drow and Omni Knight received nerfs. Arguably, Omni Knight's nerf has been more substantial. Omni Knight also tends to do a little bit better in pubs than he does in coordinated matches, just because one of the things that he really provides for you is the ability to make up for miscommunications, right? He heals a hero, he stops a hero from being magic targeted if he is out of place. Omni Knight really is there to kind of smooth over those awkward moments of your team, and if you do have a really well-oiled team, you don't necessarily need that. The ban on the Omni Knight may also imply that they're looking at some serious magic damage from one of their cores. The Wraith King is going to be coming out here. That is not at all serious magic damage from a core, but there is still one core left at least.
And this is one of the few Wraith Kings I've seen in competitive play, at least from my limited perspective, but picked up pretty early here in the draft. He is a hero known to be countered fairly easily, either through Diffusal Blade or Mana Leak, or such as Invoker EMP. So picking him up early here is curious, and it really makes you question what UC Davis is looking to do with their draft.
Yeah, part of me thinks that that's going to be a support Wraith King, and that they're really just trying to bait out an anti-mage or a PL pick of some kind, something in addition to the potential EMP, just to try and get their opponents to really heavily move into the counter, then turn it into a support and pull out a core later on. You don't normally see the Wraith King as a core pair up with the Faceless Void, just because you need a perfect Chronosphere in order to utilize the damage of the Wraith King. But I've seen crazier things in CSL. It is
very true, very true.
Yeah, I feel compelled to once again point out that in CSL you're going to see somewhere between high-level pubs and professional games. These are not professional teams. These are not teams that are training 8 hours a day. A lot of pocket strats, a lot of cheese strats, and a lot of comfort picks do come out in CSL. And the team that picks the heroes that they're most comfortable with is often the team that comes out ahead.
Absolutely, and as we mentioned earlier, one player was rushing back from a midterm simply to play this game, right? So they simply don't have the time to just invest in these pro-level strats that you might come to expect from a more established league. But that's the joy of CSL, isn't it? Getting to see crazy games from college students with huge amounts of tuition on the line, and it's just, I cannot be more excited.
Now, I'm wondering if we're going to see a Tinker pulled out here for UC Davies. I mean, the laser is pretty good into Invoker in the lane. No, we're going to go for Templar Assassin instead. Okay, that is equivalently good at zoning through the early game. Invoker doesn't really have a good way to take the refraction off, short of that cold snap that he might end up grabbing. For the most part, it is a decent pick. It will also allow a little more synergy with the Chronosphere.
Absolutely, and picking too many short-range cores is a drawback of picking that Faceless Void, right? Like you mentioned, the Chronos will need to be absolutely spot on, but Templar Assassin does bypass that a little bit with the range and the Sideblade's bonus range, so
yeah. And it is also something that we want to keep in mind, that Lucky 57 does have well over 300 matches on the Templar Assassin.
He's fairly comfortable.
This is a guy who has over 7,000 solo MMR, and he still manages to hold a slightly greater than 50% win rate with this hero. So, yeah, it is a comfort pick to say the least.
Absolutely. And just to touch a bit on UC Irvine, because we've talked a bit about UC
Yeah.
Davis so far, but UC Irvine is a completely new team to CSL. They had no team last year. And with this, the new innovation of their esports arena that you've probably heard about, it's just their administration is really pushing esports on their campus. And for them to sport a Dota team this year, and a good one at that, as you were mentioning, these players are all very skilled. It's looking very good for the future collegiate esports.
Yeah, what's really nice about Irvine here is that there's not a lot of distance between their players in terms of at least their numerical skill, right? They're all fairly close, which means that they should be able to better coordinate. They should have a more similar idea of what heroes they like to see, what the meta game is at any given moment, right? Because when you do end up throwing a high 4,000 MMR player in with a low 7,000 MMR player, is that those players are experiencing pubs completely differently. They're seeing completely different heroes. Those heroes are being successful for different reasons, and it can create a little bit of tension between players when you're talking about drafts and strategies, that they don't necessarily see the game the same way because of the type of opponents that they're used to facing.
And it's such an interesting dynamic in college play, the ability for teammates to communicate, because this MMR difference isn't really seen in the pro scene. Sure, you have 6K players and 9K players potentially in the same game, but I'd argue that the skill difference between 6K and 9K is vastly different than 4K and 7K. So the ability to effectively communicate with your teammates is a very good skill to have in CSL games.
Yeah, I have said it all last season. I'll probably say it all this season ad nauseum until people are tired of hearing it. Communication is the most important skill here for these teams, like making sure that they are able to remain calm, able to maintain a positive attitude, and communicate with each other when things need to happen. Most of these players, at least in the top third of teams here, have a pretty good idea of what needs to be done and when, and they might have different ideas of how to achieve that. But where you really see teams break down is where one or two players just do not work particularly well with the rest of their teammates.
Absolutely.
And often that does come from a change in MMR. Oh, okay, so
Yeah,
Luna's
this is-
going to give them some early game damage. This will be interesting.
Overall, a well-rounded comp. You're right with that support Wraith King. I have timed out from the server. Excellent.
As have I.
Excellent. So as we reconnect and get back into the draft, I am going to throw it over to Band. Band is our sponsor for the season, and they are doing great things for collegiate esports. So without any more words, please give your eyes and ears to Band. We'll be right back.
Ben, Sam, and Ken are on separate journeys to defeat the menacing Vile Dragon. But let's just say luck isn't on their side. If only there was a way for them to find each other and band together. Well, that's why there's Band. It's a mobile app that allows people to come together using common interests. With Band, you can find fellow gamers, chat, schedule gaming sessions, and conduct polls. Stage epic battles with friends while sharing videos and photos along the way. So try Band today. Band. Be together.
Only.
And we are back. Quick audio issue as well. Pardon this. Alrighty, we are in game. With a pause. You back, Gordon?
I am working on it. My Dota is not super happy with me right now.
I feel
It
that.
is giving me the giving me the business.
Fret not. Nothing has happened as of yet, but while we get Gorgon back in the game, I will break down the lanes for you. On the Faceless Void, heading to the off lane, judge me Twitch, I dare you. And Twitch chat, that is a challenge. Over on the Luna, we have PMA. Templar Assassin, we have Lucky57. MZ Pig on the support Wraith King. And rounding it out, Chocobo on the Shadow Demons. As Gorgon reconnects, I purposely
I am
started with
here.
UC Davis, so you get to take the hard names.
All right. So for UC Davis, we do have Miracle. I think that's a miracle play on the Clinks. Just gonna go ahead and say this is Axe. We've got C2 taking that Invoker as we had mentioned during the draft, and an Ogre Magi is going to be played here, and then a Slardar is going to be in the off lane. I'm really loving the lack of Latin
Characters?
characters here.
So while I get the settings fixed, Slardar has already teleported down to the bot lane, got an Observer Ward down, not blocking, just good vision. And this should help him out quite a bit. Won't obviously get dewarded. The standard wards to block the camps would get dewarded if they noticed it. However, I do think this ward will stay up for a bit.
Yeah, this is increasingly important, right? The teleporting out in a competitive level, in competitive play, teleporting out to get that ward up as necessary before your opponents actually get there. The teleport scroll is less expensive now than it used to be, and it makes it increasingly less of an option, to be quite honest, when you're a good player up against a team of good players that are communicating well.
I'm just browsing around going into a showcase mode as we await the settings. And
Boy, I hope none of the players are getting the problems with Dota that I'm getting, because if they are, this is going to be a long night of waiting.
I know. Are you timing out as well with like almost every game?
It's just tonight I've been having some trouble
Really?
with like graphics and stutter lag. Like even in the lobby, trying to pull up player profiles, I was getting stutter lag. I can't get a smooth scroll on the screen right now. Yeah, I've got 9 frames per second, and I'm not sure why. So hopefully the players aren't. Hopefully this isn't in relation to the patch that came out earlier today. This is the first time that I've actually booted up Dota since that patch. So
Same here. So here's hoping.
yeah, I'm actually gonna. Well, I fret about reconnecting again. I was, you may have noticed, I was jumping in and out of that lobby the whole time, and doesn't really seem to be doing a whole lot for me here. But as I'm getting back into the game, why don't you go ahead and walk us through what you expect to see from these teams in terms of the way their laning phase is going to break down and some of these matchups?
Absolutely. So right now we see early aggression heading towards the bot lane for UC Davis. The Wraith King as a support, the stun is great, level 1, obviously, but he doesn't do too well in the laning situation. I mean, he's going to have to get some levels. He's going to be pulling for a while, and I really don't expect Slarder to get much from this lane. He's probably going to need to resort to jungling early, and does not have an Iron Talon with him at the moment. I believe the Void does. No, neither offlaner has the Iron Talon. Void's looking to brave that offlane. Lots of regen.
Yeah, if you can, I mean, obviously Iron Talon's a very good item, and being able to move into the camp is a nice contingency plan, but you're never going to get the GPM experience that taking that offlane camp that you would have been able to get if you were able to stay in the lane, right? At the very least, the experience is going to be much better in the lane. The lane creep experience, you're just not fast enough without any sort of cleave. So moving into that offlane camp for a Void is often considered just a standard these days. But part of the reason it's a standard is because you're expecting to go up against equivalently skilled opponents, right? In a professional level game, that's the case. This might not be that same situation, right? So we might actually be looking at Judge Me Twitch, I Dare You, expecting his opponents to be a little bit less experienced than him, and trying to leverage that to his advantage, get more experience out of this lane than he otherwise would have.
And he's running up slowly with the ward. Didn't teleport out like you were mentioning earlier, but he should get this block down if he so desires.
Yeah, it is amusing to me that our Dire side team here was aware that they needed to teleport out the Slardar, and they were right to do so, you might notice. That
Right.
entire UCD squad is here trying to stop for a ward. But they didn't themselves actually scoot out to stop a potential ward from UCD. Right, so they knew that they had to teleport out in order to get their ward up, but they didn't actually think to try and move out to punish. Maybe they expected UCD to also teleport out and just already be done.
So, interesting play here with the ward from Faceless Void, actually blocking
the
the camp for the axe. That is
The battle's starting.
pretty creative. I like that play.
This is particularly smart because this is the camp that you're going to have to use, and you can actually see Axe doing it already. He wants to cut down these trees so that he's able to move into this camp and knock it down, taking minimal damage before he gets, so that he's able to get up a couple levels before he has to face tank creeps, right? So that he's also able to double stack potentially if he moves fast enough. And he won't be able to do either one of those things with this block. He'll have to actually go face tank a camp somewhere, and it's really going to slow down his progression.
And there we see it. Axe is sad. Pings it out immediately, so they're well aware, but I'd argue the damage is dealt. You know, as you were saying, he's going to have to go face tank something, and that's not the ideal situation for him.
Yeah, he's not going to get as much gold or experience doing this either, even if, like, not even including the cost in regen. He's just not getting as much. So a very nice play here by Judge Me Twitch, I Dare You. And once again, showing how confident he is that he doesn't think he needs vision in this lane.
He ran all the way there. Like, that's a pretty deep ward to place, and no consequences this time, so well played.
Yeah, they are going to try to move on him, but they don't really have the damage right now in order to get him. It is smart to try and exchange hits with him as much. If you can whittle him down slowly, then he's not going to be able to get as much out of the time walk. And Ogre obviously has great armor, great regen. It's really his job to be out in front on top of that baseless void.
Despite that early ward axe lead in CS, it's what you expect. The man farms fast, but all in all,
he does have a stout shield up now as well, so
That-
he should be doing pretty okay. It is still going to slow down his jungle progression.
I do want to
He
point
has
out
to
this
move
mid lane.
farther in order to. What's up?
The mid lane, however, is well, until that last wave, pretty TA favored. As you mentioned, Lucky, extremely skilled TA, so perhaps to be expected. Oh, T-Tors, take it easy on me, Twitch. First blood of the CSL season is missed by yours truly. Alas, Slardar in an awkward position there. Wraith King out of mana, so inevitably he must have stunned, but pretty deep, and I'm curious on how he got there. Did you catch that, Gorgon?
I actually didn't catch it, but I'm still running at about 9 frames per second. So.
Oh, okay.
I'm doing the best I can with what I've got, but Twitch can just be happy that I am not the computer actually running this. I feel like I'm watching Warcraft 3 played on an old AOL. Once again, I'm not sure why, but we'll figure it out.
Fear not, I'll eat the blunt of this one. The T-Tor spam will be very real once the delay wears off, but all in all...
Alright, so let's talk about the way that the mid game is going to break down here. This probably is not a kill. Right. So TA is going to have increasingly strong lane presence, but because of the side blades, the Forged Spirits build here is not going to be particularly effective, although it will allow the Invoker to knock off some of the refraction charges. TA should be able to clean that up pretty easily, as we just saw. And the Axe can't really rotate in because he's getting off to a slower start, which means that this Ogre Magi is probably going to have the burden of rotation onto him. And that, once again, just justifies Judge Me Twitch, I Dare You's bold decision to go out and try to face tank the lane, right? The fact that his mid laner is doing so well that he knows that support will probably have to rotate away. That's a lot of faith that he put into those other lanes.
Careful Dota all around the map, nothing too out of the ordinary. However, the Wraith King has just gone mid, smoked up, looking for a play. Axe is in position to run down if he wants, although doesn't look like much will happen. Invoker here is fairly healthy, just salved up, so this is no longer an option for him.
Yeah, Wraith King's actually going very deep.
Yeah, this is extremely deep. Expecting TP support, but
there's no TP support needed. I mean, they're probably not going to kill the Wraith King if they rotate up there. They definitely aren't going to save the Axe because he's not going to die. And then they're rotating very deep away from their own lanes. So had somebody TP'd in there, it probably would have just been a waste of time. And it probably would have been the Ogre who would have been responsible for TPing him as well. So a nice heads-up play there by the Dire side, just to have a sense that there wasn't any real damage going to be done there. Now Axe is going to come up behind on nighttime. Nice rotation.
TA might be alright here. Refraction is up, dodging some damage. Cold Snap will wear off. Wraith King coming from the top side. Getting a bit of damage down on the Axe, although he will be eating the blunt of this. Got the call under the Golems as well. The stun lands, spinning. It will get the Wraith King in time. Falls in the end, but support Wraith King for an Axe. Gold going to the Templar Assassin as well. Not the worst trade in the world.
Yeah, if you're UCD, you take that. Now, for the Axe, that's not the worst situation in the world, but only because of how slow his start was, right? If he had gotten off to remotely close to the start that he wanted, that would have been an unsufferable trade. But, you know, when days are slow, you have to kind of take anything.
You'll take what you could get. It's right on back to that jungle in a very interesting way to play the 4 support, or the 4 position Axe rather. Not too much of a support. Should be fairly effective against UC Davis this game, though, moving on later in the game.
This is starting to become very unraveled. I don't really see what the stage of the game is that you take UC Davis down off of this, right? They're going to be able to start knocking down towers very quickly here with the Luna. is going for a Max Lucent Beam build, which is going to allow her to kind of face tank some, or kind of run into opponents. A Miss Pig may go down here.
Smoke
Maybe a
gank.
step in the right direction.
Smoke gank into the Haste Rune, into the Sunstrike. That is yet another Skeleton King, Wraith King rather, in the grave.
That's a nice catch, and that certainly helps. And the haste is not quite done here, but they're not going to be able to hold PMA still quite long enough in order to make something happen.
I think their goal was that bot lane Luna for that smoke gank, but again, you're going to take the Wraith King. You'll take what you could get here.
Right. When you're getting off to a slow start, anything is better than nothing.
Luna in some trouble here. Eclipse goes out, hits creeps on the way though, not doing as much damage to the code. Luna should fall here in the end. Gets the Ogre, but multiple call on with Axe there. Misses the dunk on the Chocobo. He's going to have to run away. Slithering Crush will pick it up in the end. 2 for 1. Not a good trade for UC Davis.
Yeah, that actually was... I would qualify that as a pretty serious misplay by UCD. They should have been aware that all of their opponents were there. So there's no real reason to be outside of their tower, or at least that far away from their side of the lane, right? If you draw a line down the lane, that Luna could have stood on this side of the line and been perfectly safe. The Ogre's stun range is not supremely long, but instead she was kind of looking for trouble while the creep equilibrium was pushing into her, and her Eclipse ended up getting soaked up quite a bit.
Mid lane, though. Lucky looks to be in a bit of trouble here. Refraction is up. Halfway burned, though. Shadow Demon will do what he can to save her. However, there are 4 here in the mid lane. Stunned up. Amplified damage. Refraction goes out, but can't refract the call. That is a dead Templar Assassin in the mid lane.
Well, they know exactly what our concerns were, and they are saying this is the time in the game that we're going to come together. They are losing a substantial amount of experience relative to what they would normally expect to get, because they are grouping up as 3 and 4, and they're splitting all the experience from these lanes. But they're able to kind of hold down their opponents for a little while they look for their window, right? So they are only about a little short 1,500 experience in the lead, only sitting on about a 500 gold lead, but they have held their opponents down at least a little while longer to help that Invoker get up to the level 9 and 11 that he needs.
And, oh, I forgot to turn on mute co-broadcasters. Apologies, chat. Allows,
Stay one, guy.
Yeah.
Stay one. I'm podcasting on 8 frames per second. You know, sometimes you gotta have a little bit of an echo.
It was only right there, though. Only catching at the very end. Fret not.
All right, well, as the mid game starts to break down here, this
Chrono in the mid lane. Lots of damage going on the Invoker. I do not see him getting out of this one with his life. Indeed, he will fall. And trade back on the other mid laner. Looking good for UCD.
As I was about to say, as the game starts to approach the mid game, this is going to start to become pretty perilous for UCD's opponents. I mean, there still are no towers down, so there is still time, but Axe got off to a very slow start. He's still sitting on just the Iron Town. He doesn't even have his Vanguard up yet, right? They have been forced to rotate as 4, meaning that they are ceding quite a bit of experience and other resources to their opponents in order to try and make that Gambit work off to force their opponents' heads down a little bit. And honestly, UCD do not seem that intimidated, though they did give up quite a few kills in rapid succession. Luna does now have her Helm of the Dominator finish. She just picked it up from the side shop, but the equivalency from the Clinks is just Treads and Blightstone, not really sitting on much of anything at all.
Dire's bottom tower needs some help.
Templar Assassin will continue to get big. They did catch the D-ward out onto their Ancients, or rather they D-warded the block on their Ancients, which is critical for getting this Templar Assassin getting rolling early.
Yeah, and especially with the very, very fast Helm of the Dominator, right? That's one of the synergies that you have here. Luna does very well with the extra armor and with the lifesteal pumping off of the Moonglaive, and she happens to grab a stacking technique so that the TA can get off.
Blink Dagger on display from the Slardar, and that is a dead Templar Assassin. Good day, sir!
That's a pretty good timing for that Slardar.
Absolutely.
Granted, he was the recipient of some of these kills, but that could be the saving grace here, because UCD, they're going to be told now basically you have to come and respond to us. I'm interested to see if they buy that bait, because honestly they could just siege at tier 2, continue to harass down or at least contest the Clinks and just have their supports kind of hang out in the mid lane. Yeah, and actually the Slardar is rotating in now. So a good play by UCD, but that group up and the reveal of the Blink Dagger very successful here.
Absolutely, it caught me off guard. A 10-minute Blink Dagger on a Slardar with a fairly rough start to the off lane. As you mentioned, he has been the recipient of these kills, so he has been slowly but surely brought back into relevance. But
yeah, honestly, I think that he's probably the best person to grab that recipiency, like to grab that boon. The Axe would be an okay person to give that to, but since he did go for a more defensive, tanky build, he's not building as the initiator. Really what they needed is rapid initiation, so that they can continue to apply the pressure. As soon as they let the pressure off, this Luna TA combination is going to start rolling through them, and especially considering the TA is going to have quite a hefty stack to chew through, she should get a very early Desolator. Not very early, but she should get a fairly early Desolator for this level play at least.
Double damage rune popped, and blood in the water for this Templar Assassin. The camp is blocked, however, too little too late, as she will be picking up for him. Blink Crush onto the Wraith King in mid. Amp damage. Sunstrike will land. Gets the wand off, and it looks like they're going to try to turn this around. 3-man Chronosphere out of Judge Me Twitch. Getting a little bit of damage out. Caught the Wraith King. Crush will come out as well. Nothing more doing here, but
they're going to continue to chase this. The TA is coming in with the double damage, and they're at least going to try to apply pressure onto the tower.
Meanwhile, bot side, Axe tried to go in from behind, and he will be chased down here. Although, the Wraith King is quite low. Still has mana for ult, so he's not dead to rights here. And the clips will be popped for the Axe kill. Wraith King's reincarnation will be popped in the end. However, you take those as you see, Davis.
Yeah, UCD also on that Wraith King is holding on to a Mango, so that there's no real way to stop him from getting that ult off. And that was one of the factors in them being so aggressive, is that they knew they could frontline that Wraith King with absolutely no consequences whatsoever. But they did just give up quite a bit of their resources for this kind of a fight.
Absolutely.
And I do like that the pressure that is coming out here in response.
Chronosphere and Eclipse were popped in that last fight, giving UC Irvine quite a bit of leeway to push here.
Yeah, and they also don't have the front line, right? Like, the Wraith King is actually a really big part of the strategy, despite being a support.
5 in the mid lane. Looks like this tower's not in for a great time, and it's falling quite quickly. Blink Crush onto the Templar Assassin, amp damage as well. We'll get Disrupt saved, but the Invoker is here. Call onto the Illusions as well. More spins for the Axe makes Axe happy. Amp damage on the Wraith King as well, but he'll get out A-okay.
Dire is responding to this pressure that occurred early very, very well. I do still have some concerns about their balling up a little bit too much and ending with less resources than they otherwise would have, but they did have the Clinks away from this ball for quite a while. And the Faceless Void didn't do as good of a job as I would have expected, kind of harassing that Clinks down, partially for lack of vision. And because the Faceless Void is going for a non-damage oriented build, he's not really able to do anything with the Chronosphere himself.
Absolutely. It takes a while. You need that Vladimir's, you need that Diffusal Blade, and often one more item. However, Lucky blinks in. Crush onto him, though. Might get the Axe out alive. Yeah, Ogre will sacrifice his life for it, but in the end, the Axe will get out alive, potentially. Slows are going out. Lucky still does have that Blink Dagger, should he choose to pursue, and he will call it the perfect time. Crush as well. This should get Axe out. Okay, maybe not. Running through more traps. And
UCA does have a blink, yeah. So
UC Irvine
no way.
scatters to the winds.
They did grab that tier 2 in the mid lane, which is nice. This is a little bit of what I was concerned about, though. The fact that if you do go for a very snowball-oriented strategy, it only takes one little slip-up before things start to slide out of your direction. And the fact that UCD was not so grouped up means that when things start sliding in their direction, they should already have a leg up, right? When Tower Gold equalizes, UCD is going to have a lot more control. Dragonlance up on the Luna. They are going to presumably grab Roshan here. The vision given by the Sunstrike going to smoke in.
Chocobo is far out here. He will break the smoke. Void goes in. Chrono onto one only. Shadow Demon dies in the back lane, but Slardar will be caught as well. Void will fall in the end, but the Chrono already dropped. His job is done. TA is in hot pursuit. However, Axe in the back line will be going on to the Luna. Will call her in the end. Crazy fight breaking down 2 places at once here. Lucky and MZ Pig get stunned up. Lucky in a heap of trouble, will die in the end. The dunk will mix, the arrow will not. Wraith King still with no ults. Ignite goes down. That is a dead Wraith King. Blink Crush onto the Luna as well. Here comes the meatball call. Mega kill. In the end, full 5-man wipe. Shadow Demon coming up at the very end there. Roshan is available for UC Irvine.
Yeah, that's the importance of smoke right there. If UCD had smoked into the Roche pit, more than likely, they don't get hit by that Sunstrike right away. They don't get hit by that re-engagement right away. But because they just went kind of blazingly in, I feel like a couple of moments in this game, UCD have just been a little bit too cocky, right? Their hubris has shown. That Luna got picked off in the bottom lane, wasting that Eclipse and losing 2 heroes because she was a little too aggressive into 3 or 4. They just lost down on Roshan. Even in the mid lane engagement, they used a lot of their engagement resources trying to be very foolhardy, and they only managed to grab 1 support for all those resources and lost their tier 2 mid. So UCD, I am seeing a lot of individual skill from these players, but they don't really seem to be putting it together in a very cohesive package, at least so far.
I am completely on board with that. That Rosh seemed eager. It was a very rushed attempt, and they have plenty of damage. There's no doubt about that. However, potentially not respecting their opponents and having a lot of faith in their ability to land that Chronosphere on a good amount of targets, get that Eclipse down.
Yeah, and having gone for the Blink Dagger on the TA, that's not a build that you get if you want to move in for an early Roche. That's a build that you get if you want to be moving out and picking off heroes. So probably pressuring a tower would have been a safer play there. Not only do they have more visibility and more escape options, but with the Dragonlance on the Luna and the Blink Dagger on the TA, it's really closer to what they're designed to do. And I do like that they are starting to kind of split push towers down now, having kind of failed on that Roshan attempt the first time around.
Absolutely. And UC Irvine appearing quite happy to trade this as well.
No. Yeah, it's difficult to call who goes late game better. It really depends on, I think, how far ahead this Clinks is. If the teams are relatively even, but the Clinks is really far ahead, then Dire side probably has this, thanks in large part to the negative armor coming from the Slardar and all of the versatility that Invoker grants.
1-man chrono dropped simply for escape, and that is not the ideal situation for UC Davis and Blink Crush. Clinks has a Deso already and is doing quite a bit of damage to the Void. He will die in the end. Yule's onto a melee creep. I like it. I approve. And not looking good for UC Davis. That Chronosphere is one of their best tools to win these fights against UC Davis. Oh, and the Slardar's here as well. Yeah, Stun, Crush, Sunstrike. Ult is popped, and this is not where you want it popped. Blinks out, actually. Good timing, but they know where he is. He's dead to rights.
UCD bought too many Blink Daggers for what they're doing. Like, to be honest, like, they bought a lot of initiation. They have one on Wraith King and one on TA, but they're getting initiated on. They're never really in a position where they have good vision. In fact, look at the map, right? There's barely any vision at all. They're relying almost entirely on psionic traps, which are not going to give them the sort of vision that they need in order to engage. It's going to give them defensive vision and objective vision. But they put a lot of resources into these Blink Daggers that really have not paid off so far. It's very rare to say that, right? It's just the way that they're playing the game. Fairly late pickup on the Hand of Midas for the Faceless Void as well was interesting.
Yeah,
they're certainly still in a pretty good position in order to try and move into a victory hold here, though. They need to make sure they're getting vision up. They need to just kind of buy out time on that Aegis, and then force a fight someplace in more neutral territory, rather than giving their opponents the opportunity to set the terms.
And as you mentioned, the Hand of Midas on the Void just gives him next to nothing to do outside of just chrono and time dilation, right? He is not in a fighting state right now.
Yeah. Hand of Midas on Faceless Void is a little more combat actionable than it is on most heroes, because a lot of people forget that time lock is the bulk of Faceless Void's damage, right? It is attack speed is implicitly damage for Faceless Void in a bigger way than it is for most heroes, just because that bonus 125 damage at this stage. But that said, it's still a very small increase in damage relative to like a damage item would be. So it's not giving him that much, and he's certainly not able to solo kill anybody because the Wraith King isn't really able to contribute. Luna isn't really able to contribute in a lot of cases in the Chronosphere, depending on how it's positioned. You can be looking at a bit of trouble using that Chronosphere in any way other than a Southeast Asia style selling Chrono.
Blink call, that's Dead Shadow Demon. Oh, Time Walk in with the Void does catch 2 here.
That's fair.
Oh, not sure how much else they're going to get here. Slardar was wreaking havoc in the backline. Eclipse does come out and catches the Axe. Will they get the Clinks as well? They will. This fight looks to be all but over as the Ogre falls as well. Invoker will teleport out in time, and Slardar runs to the hills. And successful defense of the high ground, but...
Yeah, that was actually a pretty solid grab there with the Chronosphere. It looked like, and bear in mind, I'm, playing on between 7 and 12 frames per second, but, he managed to grab the 2 targets that he wanted. His team then used that time, instead of not attacking those targets down, attacking the targets outside the Chronosphere, and kind of bought the space in order to kill the hero that had gone too deep. I like that use of Chronosphere. I think that's the best use of Chronosphere in this case, because his team isn't really well designed to actually attack inside of the Chronosphere in a lot of cases.
Void is initiated on in the mid lane here. Time Dilation will stop the crush. I imagine that stops the chase as well, but UC Davis has reacted very well to the map, I would argue, and they hold the current 2 highest net worth positions.
Yeah, they're doing a good job of making sure that they're maintaining control, they're maintaining their composure. They haven't really made... The mistakes that they have made, or the maybe not mistakes, but over-aggressions, seem to have been from feeling a lack of pressure rather than feeling too much pressure. This team hasn't really changed their game plan so far. They've been doing a pretty good job of adjusting to what they need based on their item times. And by the way, Amanta, Helm of the Dominator, and Dragonlance all ready for the Luna. The Dragonlance, as we had previously mentioned, is pretty important for using that Chronosphere for damage. TA also is sitting on top of a Desolator, so they do really have their core damage items out now. And at this point in time, it's just about finding a fight that's favorable.
Action on the map has slowed down significantly. It's time to farm, but as you mentioned, that Dragonlance provides a very good opportunity for Luna here. They may... Oh, this Luna looks like tasty, tasty food to this Invoker. They'll run into each other. Yule's onto her. The team is coming back, misses the Deafening Blast, and huge damage coming out. Although Blink Crush onto the Void in the backline, he just falls instantly. That was a ton of damage. Blink Call onto the Templar Assassin as well. Sunstrike comes out, but she blinks out in plenty of time. The Shadow Demon, however, not nearly as lucky.
Yeah, Shadow Demon not really providing that much utility so far this game, unfortunately. He does have 7 assists, but a lot of those assists, not very many of them were like disruption setups, partially because they don't really have any skill shots that need a disruption setup, right? And because there's not like a blink dagger on the Shadow Demon, he's not really the core initiator anyway. They have 2 blinks from other heroes. The Shadow Poison damage, he did go for a max Shadow Poison build. I'd be surprised if that was a substantial amount of damage at the end of the game, to be honest. Because he hasn't been layering them over the Chronosphere. All things said and done, the player is doing fine, but the pick just doesn't really seem to be working for him.
I would agree with that. It's very rarely have we seen UC Davis's full team fight potential in effect here. And the Shadow Poison is a great tool to use for the Chronosphere. However, more often than not, they're using it at suboptimal times. Other than that high ground defense, which was a very good use, it's been reactionary rather than offensive, and the pieces just haven't fall together.
Yeah, I feel like because of the awe-inspiring power of sudden kills, like you just click somebody off with Shadow Poison, people really do forget about the value of Soul Catcher. But 50% pure damage bonus is a lot.
That's no joke.
Somebody, right, and TA hits them, you can kill them from maybe 2 hits, right? But they really are going for that damage over time sort of attrition build, which once again doesn't really seem to fit the rest of the draft. So yeah, I just feel like the Shadow Demon could maybe be slightly better utilized. Really the most effective way that I've seen him used so far is that he does have level 2 disruption, meaning that the illusion damage is scaled up a little bit, and they have been disrupting the Luna in order to siege towers. But
Radiant's top
because
tower
illusions do
has
less
it
damage
better.
to towers and already does less than the hero, you know, it honestly is not that big of a burst.
Blink Crush on the Wraith King. We've seen this one before, and he blinks out into the call. Gets the Blade Mail off in time, though. Huge Chrono coming out from the Void. That's 3-man. Templar Assassin is free reign in the backline. She's doing work. The Eclipse comes out, and Slarter's dead here as well. Invoker and Ogre must run to the wings, although Axe goes back in with a pretty big blink call. TA might die. She does. That's a huge pickup for this team fight. Momentum is swing completely. Void going in on the Axe as well, and chances are he gets out of this one. Dodges the Shadow Poison, blinks up, and he should be alright. No bash? No bash? He's out of there.
Yeah, that was a very nice re-engagement by that Axe, and they managed to make that count. If they had not re-engaged with that Axe there, that probably is a Roshan grab for UCD. And from there, I don't really know that Dire really have the foothold in this game to fight up against an Immortal TA, right?
That entire sequence of events was just... The entirety of UC Irvine was waiting in the top lane for either the Void or the Luna to push up. They were all sitting in the trees, and just a stray Sunstrike from Invoker sent them all back to base just in an instant. So, all said and done, the quick reaction from UC Irvine, pretty good at the beginning, but the Chronosphere and immediate burst from the Templar Assassin just swung the fight in UC Davis's favor. Although credit to the Axe for going back in there and picking up that kill.
Yeah, no, that was, like I said, that was a very, very good re-engagement. And not only does killing the TA really help them and slow down the roll of that TA, but it just stopped them from being able to move into that Roshan effectively. And presumably UCD have to have a sense that this is going on, and they are going to smoke up and head over here.
The Templar Assassin's trap was just popped. Blink stun. Blade Mail from the Wraith King gets a bunch of damage down on the Slarter. He's done before the fight begins. I imagine Ogre falls very quickly here as well. Axe in the backline. Blink call onto the Shadow Demon. He's dead to rights, and
Mega kill.
they scatter to the wings. Ogre does die in the end. It looks like everyone else will be getting out just fine. That leaves Rush wide open for UC Davis.
Yeah, and like I said before, I'm not really sure, but barring a really serious blunder from UCD, I'm not really sure that there's a foothold in this game for the Dire side to fight up against TA twice, right? Because TA's been the bulk of the problem, but you can't just ignore the Luna either. And what has been the option up until this point is kind of zone the Luna while moving on to the TA, but you can't do that indefinitely. Once Luna gets zoned back a little bit, she will be able to turn back around and fight you from the fringes of whatever combat you're doing. They don't really have the positional advantage in order to run a fight knowing that TA is going to come back.
All said and done, that fight was done without ultimates. UC Davis is locked and loaded for another team fight, and while they're backing off now, I do imagine that's in their sights to get fighting, because they rely very heavily on this Faceless Void and Eclipse going off.
Yeah, the Eclipse is a fair amount of damage. I mean, obviously, it's not nothing. I think really the physical damage that they're dealing is the bulk of what UCD is relying on, if only because it's controllable in a way that a lot of these fights have been not necessarily the best setup for UCD. They have not been quite as good at picking their moment to fight as they have been actually fighting.
Smoke coming in here from UC Irvine. They smell blood in the water, but UC Davis seeing nothing on the map, even with their poor ward coverage at the moment. Oh, the scan catches them out, though. They knew. This is
Yeah, that was very smart.
failed smoke from UCI, and well played by UC Davis.
Yeah, UCD is being forced to draw out some time on the Aegis clock, which I think is really what is needed right now. But they still have plenty of time to make something happen. They only need one good fight while this Aegis is up to presumably crack high ground. And I would suspect that their next go-to move is going to be go top and push that tower, force out a fight in a favorable position, especially considering it's night right now and Luna has that additional night vision, giving them a little bit of advantage when it comes to these engagements for the next minute or two.
At the moment, they seem to be grouping mid, and scattering. It looks like they still want more time to farm up. And Luna heading top alone normally be pretty ballsy proposition. However, she is 6,000 net worth ahead of the Invoker, the next highest on the Dire. So she
that unfortunately does not make her immortal, though. She does need to be careful because Invoker and Clinks can kill her pretty easily. She does have BKB up, but you don't want to be using a charge just to stay alive because you're out of position, right?
These illusions, though, they are pretty tough to take down with how much health she has, and Invoker has to run away. The spirits were just taken down. Oh, Templar Assassin blinks in on the Slarder, gets a big chunk of damage done thanks to that meld, but looks like Wraith King was the one initiated on. He survives through it all, still has his ultimate available, but no
They're
kills.
going to siege middle instead of going for the easy tower top. I guess this ends up working out for them. I don't see why you wouldn't try to force your opponents into the easy tower top, just because maybe your opponents kind of make a mistake and engage you off the high ground, and if not, then you're going to get that free search of gold. They're going to try to slow siege with the Shadow Demon illusions, though, and TA is coming up to reduce the armor just to make sure that the illusions are that much more effective.
Looks like the tower may be going down soon. It will. Taken down by the creeps at the end of it.
Yeah, catapult.
All in all, slow and steady wins the race. UC Davis taking that tier 3. And these glaives are still wreaking havoc. The Rack's eaten significant chunk of damage, and no hero has stepped foot on the high ground.
Yeah, the only way for them to win this is if UCD, to win this engagement, is if UCD oversteps substantially, or if they just go in and they pull out the Luna from the back line. But doing that would be very difficult with this Faceless Void sitting here ready to chrono, either defensively or as a zoning maneuver. If anything tricky does come out of Dire.
Third set of illusions are on their way up. Manta illusions as well, and these glaives, man, they are getting around. And good damage coming out onto the melee racks. However, these do regen.
Yeah, they're planning on knocking it down before they leave. There's no reason to stop. Like, they don't regen fast, and there's no reason for UCD to stop as long as the Aegis is in hand.
Net worth trickling above 7,500 now, and UC Davis knows they're in the driver's seat. Templar Assassin actually goes all the way up, expecting to be initiated on. Blinks back. That is the Aegis gone, however.
Yeah.
As this
That
push
once
becomes
again
a
is-
lot more dangerous. X Blinks calls at the perfect time, however, I time out. No, lots of lag.
Double kill. Monster kill.
Well, through the Eclipse, they're going to go ahead and grab a triple kill. There's going to be the Cyclone coming out here, and then the Rex is going to go down. TA and the Luna going to pop their BKBs and back out. The Slithering Crush is going to land on Miss Pig here, but she does have that ultimate sitting. Sunstrike is going out, but Axe is going in deep again. If they lose this after these buybacks, it is over. Miss Pig still standing here with the Blade Mail up, and then that is going to be a Rampage coming out from PMA through the ice wall and trying everything they can to get her out. C2 is going to be up in the Cyclone, but he should be going down right after. That is going to be the ultimate coming out of the Wraith King, and they continue to move in. Only one life left here for the Dire side. He is going to be thrown into that disruption, and will be able to get back to his fountain, but will be enough. The Ogre Magi comes back, manages to grab one kill, but geez, that Slardar almost going down in the fountain. And there is still an entire UCD squad here hitting on top of the throne. Multicast will not be enough to save you, my friend, as Ogre is going to be thrown down by Lucent Beam, and the Slithering Crush comes out. You got to give it to them. They are not willing to give up easily, but I think that the time is nigh.
Sincerest apologies, stream, for Dota choosing the worst time possible to crash. As I am reloading into the game, it is, alas, over. That's a tough one to swallow.
You know, it makes you feel any better. It was just an eclipse and everything was over. The glaives just did too much damage at that stage. And, you know, when we're looking at the way that those heroes were utilized, that's what I was saying since the very beginning, right? Like, UCI were risking running themselves into a hole where as soon as a fight started to turn the way of their opponents, that there was no recovery.
As I try to remedy the situation, give us a rundown of just your thoughts from the game. UC Davis slipping up a bit towards the beginning, but they definitely pulled it together by the end.
Yeah, I think UC Davis knew that with their draft and with the strategy that they were running, not to mention they were confident in their own skills as a team and as individuals, they felt, or they appeared to feel, pretty assured in that they would be able to recover from whatever slip-ups that they made. And granted, they were a little bit overzealous at times, especially at the beginning of the game, but they communicated to each other very well what they needed from each lane. The mid lane helped lift up a little bit of the burden from the side lanes, which certainly helped. The first blood, remember, going their way as well. And honestly, it feels like they just understood the draft better. They understood the limitations, and they realized that with their opponents roaming around to the degree that they were, it was just a matter of time before an opportunity presents.
Well, as the teams reset for the second game, I am so bummed at that crash, but thank you, Gordon. You did a wonderful job of breaking it down for us. And well, alas, we will be right back with game number 2. However, in the meantime, I do want to thank Band again for powering the entire CSL season this year. We are immensely thankful, and yeah, we'll be right back.
Ben, Sam, and Ken are on separate journeys to defeat the menacing Vile Dragon. But let's just say luck isn't on their side. If only there was a way for them to find each other and band together. Well, that's why there's Band. It's a mobile app that allows people to come together using common interests. With Band, you can find fellow gamers, chat, schedule gaming sessions, and conduct polls. Stage epic battles with friends while sharing videos and photos along the way. So try Band today. Band. Be together.
Only $14.99.
Don't miss the call. Download Band. Communication made easy.